Hello, I'm Alan McManus, the chairman of Freedom Alliance, and I'm here with Mark Turnbull, who's the candidate for Paisley in Renfrewshire South. And here we are in lovely Lochwinnoch, which is part of that constituency. Freedom Alliance is a libertarian party with a commitment to community. So, Mark, can you tell us about that balancing act? How do you feel that you would implement that if you represented this constituency in Parliament?
It's a good question. Yeah, we're a freedom party, of course, and we'd love to get rid of LEZ and general freedoms, health freedoms. I think the problem is that we don't have too many candidates, so I think it'd be a little while before we're in government. But it's a long, slow march. But hopefully we can get there and build a profile. I've been putting leaflets out in Glenburn about 3 years ago for the Scottish elections, and it was a little disappointing that very few people could remember the name or the leaflet. But I think we've got momentum going now, and I think we've got photographs and leaflets, and I think that hopefully makes the difference. And a general election seems to get people's attention, and they pay more attention than any other elections I've been in, and want to discuss things more. So I think we're moving.
Okay, so Mark talked about LEZ, also known as ULEZ, also known as low traffic neighbourhoods. And this is one of the things that we're campaigning on, not because we don't care about the environment, we do, but because these restrictions don't actually help anyone. And what they do is they impact on the most vulnerable people in the community, among them carers and the elderly, who need access without going all round the houses, literally, to the homes, especially if there's a need for ambulances or for other urgent services. So this is one of the well-meaning ideas that people come up with, which is not practical, and it actually does harm. So Freedom Alliance is a common sense party, and we really believe in talking to the people in local communities and saying, what do you want? Rather than imposing some top-down strategy from bureaucrats who really have lost touch with real issues. What do you think are the real issues, Mark, in Paisley and Renfrewshire South?
Well, I've been trying to ask that question to the locals. The smallish things that they would say, or big things for some people, would be simple things like the grass cutting. They don't pick up the cuttings, and it's a real mess, and the wind blows it everywhere. And a lady who was disabled was worried about she couldn't shop at Morrison's in Johnson because the lift's been out of action for a year. And I phoned up Morrison's when she was there, get through to South Africa and back to Johnson, and they're spending £750,000 on a lift. And they were trying, the local branch, the local shop was trying to organise a bus to drive the customers round to the front door, but the head office turned it down. So I think it's about 6 weeks away from now, so they'll get back, but it's taken a long time. And I suppose people complain about lockdown and things like that.
I think one of the things that is happening in this general election is that people are gradually waking up to some of the things that we have been raising as concerns in the party. And one of them is lockdown and the egregious violations of civil liberties which happened during lockdown, and the terribly negative impact that it had on children's mental health, on children's schooling, on social care, on mental health of everyone and physical health of everyone. The waiting lists in the NHS are 2 years longer than they should be. And so it does seem as if there's a general realisation that these issues are important, and that parties like Freedom Alliance have been telling the truth when we have been raising them, and actually our stance has been very commonsensical. And I think that the issues that Mark is raising, like disabled access, that is already provided for in law, and it's an anticipatory duty of providers of goods and services that disabled people should be able to access them. So this is something that local councils should be looking at. The other day in Paisley, I was trying to access a beautiful pub with my mother, who's in her 90s, and they didn't have disabled access. I couldn't get in the pub. And they said it's because it's a listed building and the council hadn't provided them with a ramp. So councils, as we know, are spending lots of money on lowering pavements and on taking away traffic lights and on rainbow crossings and all sorts of things that don't seem to be urgent priorities, and in fact can be very difficult for disabled people, for example, for their dogs trying to negotiate. Mark, what do you see in this area? What do you see that the council is doing wrong?
Well, personally, the big problem for me, when you go into the reception, you're in a queue of 4 or 5 people, and then you'll be called forward at one point, and a man will say, I'm in social work, go back in the queue, and you lose your place. One time I was there on my own, and a man's on the phone for 20 minutes or so it takes a while to get in. You know, I think everyone's been pushed onto online.
Okay, so there's a depersonalisation, and this is hand in hand with closing down of banks, closing down of sub-post offices, and as Mark says, everything's been pushed online. And if we think about people who are not online, elderly people, people who are economically disadvantaged, then this is something that is very discriminatory. It's not actually helping people to put everything online. And sometimes, if you have a sub-post office, for example, sometimes the person in the post office, the staff member, may be the only person that an old, lonely person might speak to all day. So it's about socialisation, it's about community, it's about help. And there are these very commonsensical ideas, very personal ideas that we need to get back to, I think. Mark, how do you feel about the manifesto of Freedom Alliance, which is basically about liberty, about freedom from ideological extremism, about teachers being allowed to teach, about NHS staff being allowed to care for people without imposing ideologies, about women and girls being provided with safe single-sex spaces where they know that there will only be women and girls there in sports, in leisure centres, etc. How do you feel that people, the general public, are reacting to those kind of ideas?
Well, funny enough, I was in Gilmour Street, Paisley, this morning, talking about that very thing, and one of the first flats you come to above the pub, I think it's the Keg, and I was talking about whatever the term is for unisex toilets in monorail. In fact, you went there with Kath, I think I heard, and I was talking about urinals, and I thought there might have been more problems, you know, when the drink was involved, but I didn't get any stories from the staff. But certainly, a lady today was very worried about it, and it's a big deal. Yeah, they want safe spaces. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, good. I find when I talk to people, I'm standing myself in Kintyre in the Islands in a by-election on the 18th of July, and this is my dog Ben, who's trying to photobomb here.
Yes, you're right.
And I find it's one of the things that people really react to, no matter what their party allegiance is, no matter what their ideas about the constitution of the UK, that this kind of safe space, single-sex space, is something that people are very keen on, and also about robust child safeguarding, that absolutely as a party we are in favour of civil liberties for adults, and that people should be allowed to live as they choose. However, we feel that children need to be allowed to have their innocence, to grow up secure with their caregivers, with mum and dad who know best, because a child is changeable in terms of the ideas that he or she has about what's best for them, because they're growing, they're developing human beings. They don't have all the life experience, they don't know what effect their decisions will have. And therefore they need this time of being sheltered by older, wiser people. And it's not discriminatory to say that, it's simply wise. How do you feel that issue is going down in the constituency?
I think it's going well. I think it's certainly the transgender teaching of primary pupils is definitely striking a chord. It's the first thing people spotted in my leaflet, and quite taken by it, yeah.
Good, and this is something that Freedom Alliance, we risk backlash when we talk about this issue. People accuse us of being transphobic or homophobic, which is ridiculous, because a lot of us in Freedom Alliance and in the freedom movement in general have been at the forefront of demanding rights for LGBT people, and we have no problem with their rights. But I suppose you could say that we're old-fashioned liberals in that we believe that each individual should be able to do whatever they want, as long as it doesn't encroach upon the right of everyone else to do what they want. And therefore there has to be some kind of come and go. And when you have two rights which are encroaching on each other, then we have to be sensible about that. And that's what we're trying to do. So it really is a balancing act. Other policies, our economic policy is really that we have a problem with an ever-growing state, because the idea of public money is a misnomer. There is no such thing as public money. There is taxpayer money. But if we think of local councils and devolved governments and governments, these are huge corporations, and huge corporations can raise money in a variety of ways. They don't always need to go to taxation. And people are really struggling with this. And it's very remarkable that around the time of a general election, parties will start offering all sorts of free things. You know, we're going to give free transport, we're going to give free benefits, free this, free that to all these people. And you think, where is this money coming from? And one of the things that we point out continuously in the party is that the devolved government in Scotland and the UK government have given millions of taxpayer money away to foreign countries in order for them to kill the citizens of other foreign countries. And this not only depletes our own resources, but it means that we have blood on our hands in this country. And we may pay for that, because there are rumours that some countries are eyeing us up for war, and that the major parties are playing into that strategy. So this is something that we utterly oppose. Freedom Alliance, our foreign policy, is that everyone should stop killing everyone as soon as possible for good. So we're not waving any flags, we do not stand with any particular countries, but we just want peace. And apparently that's not good enough for some people, but that's what we want. We want peace. We want all the wars to stop, and we want the UK and the Scottish Government to stop funding wars. And when they go on about refugee problems, our response is stop creating the refugee problem. Because if you stopped bombing other countries and giving money to one country to bomb another, then there wouldn't be the refugee problem in the first place. How do you find that issue is, especially thinking about the imposition of masses of refugees, of young migrant men, single men, young men from North Africa on small villages, for example, which is happening in Ireland, and it's happening in some places in England. How is that playing out here?
Well, it's been mentioned a couple of nights ago in Glenburn, you know, a man that said he works all his life, a boy younger than me, he works all his life and he feels that it should be houses and jobs for people that live here all their lives. So so it's coming up,
Okay, so this is talking about the demographic change that's happening, And it's obvious that people are concerned about this. At the same time, we understand there is a cultural richness, that's true, but we have to be clear about what that means. When we use the word migrant, then that is a term that can cover all sorts of people. So, for example, our last leader in the party was a lovely lady whose family were from the Caribbean. And that hard-working generation, which very much saw themselves in continuity with British values and had no problem in integrating here. They did face racism and they overcame it. And also we can think about the doctors that we got from Pakistan, already trained, who came over that we didn't have to pay for, and without whom our NHS would be in a much worse situation than it is now. So Freedom Alliance recognises the contribution that migrants make to the UK. But obviously, again, it's about common sense. It's about a balancing act. If you have a small village, you cannot impose hundreds of young men who hardly speak English and do not share our values on that village, because otherwise women and girls will be afraid, and with good reason. And it is not racist to say that, it's simply being sensible. And women and girls need us to speak up for them, and we are speaking up for them. Mark, any last words on why people should vote for you in Paisley and Renfrewshire South?
Well, it would be a protest vote. I think we're the only people pushing against LEZ zones and general freedoms, health freedoms, and so on, and the teaching of transgender issues in primary schools. Yes, we're possibly the only freedom party, the only chance to vote for a freedom party. That's the way I'm thinking.
Okay, good. And I think a couple of things that we haven't mentioned are Freedom Alliance is very concerned about the push towards surveillance and also the push towards digital ID and the push towards electronic money, because this is all tied in with a surveillance agenda. And this is why we are very much on the side of the Keep It Cash campaign. And also something we haven't mentioned is farming, because there's a slogan now in the freedom movement: no farmers, no food. And in Kintyre, where I'm standing, this is a huge concern, where farmers are going out of business. In urban areas, it's not so apparent what's happening, but you step outside urban areas and talk to farmers, and they will tell you what they are suffering, because we can't go on like this. So we need to be supporting the farmers in farmers markets, buying directly from them. We need to be growing our own. We need to take back control of our food provision and be sensible about this. Okay,
Yeah,
so I think we'll leave it there.
Thank you.
As the sun is setting on lovely Loch Winnoch. And please vote for freedom. Please vote for Mark on the 4th of July. And please vote for our allied parties. If you look on Twitter, my Twitter handle is Gumptionology. And I have published on my blog a list of candidates that I think are worthy of your vote, which are formally or informally allied with Freedom Alliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.